Okay, I think we will get started. There's not many of us, so this is a small and compact and bijou little group of people. So good afternoon. I hope you are well. Second day of lockdown. I hope you are coping, although in terms of being teachers, your circumstances won't have changed as much. But what I'd like to do before I introduce myself, I just want me to get a bit of an insight. What I'd normally do is I'll probably do a bit of an intro and an icebreaker, but I'm not going to ask you to turn your cameras on or unmute yourselves. I might do further down the line, ask you to unmute yourselves, but just give me an indication of second day of lockdown. Obviously, this is the second time we've been in it. What is the one thing you're going to do this weekend in terms of your well-being? What are you going to do this weekend? And you could pop it in the chat function that I'm going to open now. Okay, Eddie, if you just joined us, what I've just asked is that if we could, I'd normally do an icebreaker, but obviously it's a bit more difficult in this virtual room. But if you could just put one thing in the chat that you're going to do this weekend in terms of your own well-being as we head into, well, we're already in our next lockdown. I had some a group previously. I got very jealous about some of the stuff that they were undertaking. Although somebody did say they were chainsawing, so I wasn't sure about that. 30 days, 30 runs for November. I love it, Neil. Neil, I did 5K a day for October. My legs regret it now, but it was a really good thing to do to get a bit of focus and a bit of exercise daily. How far are you running, Neil? Have you decided?
It's just some of my friends do it. My fiance did it last year. I do a lot of that stuff anyway, so it was just getting back into the swing of it. And yeah, anywhere between 30 minutes and I think start the month slowly and just build up.
Okay, fab.
Yeah.
Vicky and Emily, I don't know if you've got any problems with technology, but if you could give me just a wave or a hands up, just so I know that you're here. Oh, fab. Okay, super. Thank you very much. So in the previous group, I got one said chainsawing, which was a bit weird. One was around tiling. One was doing coastal walks, which I was pretty jealous about. There was bike rides. Oh, excellent, Richard. Richard's put his back out. Excellent. Richard, I hope you haven't got children who are going to contribute to your back pain. So one thing that I'm going to do, you could probably tell from the environment that I'm in, this isn't some fancy Teams wallpaper. This is all my own work with stickers. I share an office with my 2-year-old son, and we're going to hopefully take advantage of the reduction of traffic, all being well, that happened in the first lockdown. I'm hoping that will happen during the second lockdown, although it wasn't yesterday when I took him to nursery. But we're going to go back on our bikes and take advantage of the quiet roads and do that as a family, which will be really nice. So moving on. So thank you for that. For those of you who, well, you probably won't know me, my name is Rachel Redmond. I am one of the National Development Managers at the Youth Sport Trust. So I oversee a group of the development managers, including Chris Cause, who you may know far better than you know me. So I have a responsibility to do some national work, but then also I have a responsibility for a geographical area. So right now I am in Altrincham in Greater Manchester. So I cover Greater Manchester and Staffordshire and Stoke. So I have a national remit, but then I also deliver locally. And I'm really chuffed that I can be here this afternoon with you. And I hope you've had an enjoyable day so far. I know you've had some really good keynotes this morning from Jane and from Sue. So I hope that's been really informative. And hopefully over the next, well, it says 3:15. However, the group is quite small, so we may be able to cut that a little bit short, but I'm going to try and get through all of the content and some interactive stuff with you over the next hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I'll pop in and out of the screen. We'll use the chat function. If you've got any questions that you want to pose at any time, please use the chat function, and I'll be popping it in and out of the presentation to make sure that I can take a look at all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I'm hoping that everybody can see that. Yep, super. Let's go. Okay, so what we're going to try and do over the next hour or so is really cover the principles and some of the ideas for supporting the return to pupils. I am very aware that this is the first week or second week back for some of you, perhaps after the October half-term break. So you may have already started to implement some of the stuff that you're doing within your schools. You may still be sort of coming to terms with what exactly you need to do in terms of your PE curriculum, or how does it fit? How does it all work? How does it suit the needs of my learners? So what we want to do is try and uncover some of that, and also give you the opportunity to provide you with some ideas and solutions about an appropriate pre-curriculum at this stage that obviously supports young people's physical well-being, mental well-being, and their physical development and literacy post-COVID, and give you some practical solutions in order to do that. So the main areas that are cropping up at the moment in terms of PE, particularly at this period of time, is offering that broad and balanced curriculum, but using minimal equipment, which is difficult. And I guess one of the things that I know that Sue Wilkinson mentioned this morning was to continue to plan your ideal curriculum. That's really important, but then just adapt it to suit the circumstances that we currently find ourselves in. So don't try and deviate too much from what you want as the ideal PE curriculum for your learners. We just may need to be creative and tweak it a little bit during this time, but please have the enthusiasm to really push for what you want for your young people and your learners. We'll talk about some of the practical ideas around teaching PE indoors, in terms of, because at the moment, obviously, you're teaching a lot of it outdoors if you've got decent weather. It's got sunshine here today, which is unusual, but obviously that is going to become a bit more unpredictable over the coming months with winter coming. How can we use PE to address other issues that young people experience during lockdown? So those social skills that have probably decreased, the opportunity to have teamwork opportunities have obviously decreased, and a lot of them may be feeling a lot more isolated, a lot more anxious during that time. And how can we really use the principles of PE to really help those young people reintroduce themselves back into school life? And then also delivering team games. So I'm not going to address it, it's not an elephant in the room, but obviously there's some guidance that's come out this week around extracurricular. I do believe there could be something that's coming this afternoon. So they have obviously announced that extracurricular is to cease, but I believe that there's something to come out of the DCMS, Oliver Dowden, Secretary of State, today around actually schools should be able to still provide extracurricular, but I'm not going to dwell on that too much because I don't know the ins and outs of government workings. So just be aware that there may be something else coming further this afternoon with regard to extracurricular activity. But we'll explore some of that because I think it's still important for when we come back, if and when we do come back next week or post-Christmas, in terms of extracurricular, you've got the knowledge and the ability to be able to do that in a safe and secure environment. So we'll do a bit of impact of COVID, but on the government guidance, principles and practicalities, some of those solutions, and a bit of time for Q&A at the end if we need to. So just going to do a bit of scene setting at the moment. And this document you can see in front of you is available on the New Sport Trust website. But what we did was we were very aware that there was a number of research opportunities going on around young people and surveys of young people around the impact of them during COVID-19. And what we did at the Youth Sport Trust is we brought all those research documents together and put them into one. And what some schools have done has really taken that, because of those 7 concerns that the 6 in particular, the concerns or the outcomes and the themes that have come out of that document, is that they've used that to really emphasize the importance of why PE and physical activity is so important when children return back to school. And it's given some members of SLT and some potentially head teachers a greater understanding of how actually the impact of COVID and how it can really be addressed through an increased or heightened awareness or focus on physical activity and physical education. So if you are struggling to convince anybody, please go to that document, because it's really good in giving you the evidence-based examples that you may or may not need to really strengthen your position in terms of PE, and also share it with governors as well is really important. So some of the 5 key facts that have emerged from that is around the fitness and health of individuals. So how can PE focus and be a key contributor on wellness, both physical and mental? And how are parents aware of this? Are parents aware of actually the greater emphasis that PE can have and the greater contribution they can have outside of just a physical education lesson? And are they aware of that? We know, and you may have, Jane Molly, you may have talked about this morning, the physical activity decline, and only 90% of young people were actually doing their 60 active minutes a day during lockdown. So there is a real need, and you will have seen it, and we'll talk about that shortly, around what have you seen in your young people when they have returned to school in September, and also continuing to see, what are you continuing to see? There is a recognition that family time, in terms of them doing physical activity together, had increased, and actually families were more active during this period of time. So again, another opportunity to be creative, perhaps with active homework. So whether you're setting any homeworks on online platforms, I've got a school up here up in Manchester, they've got the Google platform, and then they post PE homework online for them to do as families and also as individuals. And is it an opportunity for us to do that engagement with parents that we're not always, it's not always the easiest, but actually has COVID presented us with an opportunity to be much more interactive with our parents, whether that be through a virtual platform or whether that be through usual school means. And how heightened the education inequality has become, that's a real key factor. So the gap in terms of disadvantage has again been heightened during COVID-19, particularly when it comes to digital disadvantage and those young people that don't have access to laptops, iPads or Wi-Fi connections within their home environment, and that's really been heightened again. But then there's also recognition that actually young people have realised that how important it is for them to be physically active, and there's almost a recognition with a lot of them that they now understand the reasons for being physically active. And actually during COVID, that was one of the things that they either enjoyed the most, or that was their escapism, was to take part in that physical activity or that sport potentially that they may have done in their household. And is this an opportunity, because now students are far more aware of the importance of being physically active, to work on that co-creation and how it can impact in our pedagogy within our PE curriculum. So that gives you just a bit of an overview of the stuff that we found out from all of those documents that we've pulled together. I'm not going to go through all of this information, because I think government policy can be dry at the best of times, but I just want to highlight a couple of things. One is, so it may have gone. So we may not have seen it, but in July, the Tackling Obesity policy was renewed. And what they want to do is really start to change that environment and empower people to make healthy choices. And that is both in adults and children. So how can we utilise some of the stuff that may be coming down the line from Public Health England to really ensure that children and families have that improved awareness of weight management, have that improved awareness of food labelling and shaping marketing in particular. So there'll be some things around that tackling obesity policy that I'm sure will impact on families and children within your settings. Obviously from September this year, you are now have the compulsory remit to deliver RSHE curriculum. And again, but is this a real opportunity to link mental health, physical health, fitness and healthy eating into your PE, school sport and physical activity curriculum? And therefore, how can our subjects play that key role in driving those outcomes within that education, that new education remit, to give them that vital sort of health message, that vital agenda on health? And how can you do that within your settings and use PE? I think like 2019 was very much about how PE could support personal development, and it's still very, very, very much around that. But actually, do we have a new opportunity again to make sure that we position our subject in terms of those whole school outcomes and supporting cross-curricular links? So what we'd like to just going to do a quick reflective questions, and please use the chat function with this, and then we may unpick a little bit. But what have you experienced so far in terms of the impact of COVID-19 on your pupils? So what are the things that you have seen? What are the things that you have heard? And how is that having an impact on your pupils within your schools? So quick 2 minutes. I would play music, but I don't think I'm allowed for copyright reasons. So please just populate the chat function around some of the things that you have seen in terms of your young people returning to school. Yep, struggling with fitness. That's a big one that came up a lot in the last group in particular. I know Emily's busy typing away. Yeah, that was a big one in the last one as well, that children have put weight on over lockdown. Fitness, yeah, which affects their ability, absolutely. Vicky, can I just pick up on something that if you want to unmute yourself, in terms of that struggling with fitness, is that something that was been heightened, and was it there previously, or is it much more noticeable now?
It's much more noticeable now. Like we would do a fitness session and the kids were like, oh, can we stop now, when they would just get on with it.
And is that very much different from where you were in, say, March time? Have you seen a significant, would they've said something like that back 6 months ago?
No.
No. Okay.
Not at all.
And is that purely because it's just that they've not done it is it a family environment thing, do you think, or was it just
I don't know. I think maybe our area is quite different cultures in our schools. So it's hard, and some parents don't really believe in sport.
Yeah,
it's really hard to push.
Yeah, so in effect, the most amount of activity they get is normally at school anyway, regardless of COVID.
Yeah.
Neil, I was going to call you Eddie then. Neil, can I just pick up on something you said about fitness, which then affects their ability? Is that their ability in PE, or is that their ability throughout in terms of academia as a whole?
There's more picking up from what our PE teachers say in our school. So I'm the SGA for our school. I'm just at this workshop, so we help set this conference up. I think it was just feedback from them when they first come back that, sometimes you do see a little drop anyway between, sometimes after Christmas or something, I guess fitness levels drop. But I think, they had to sort of maybe lower expectation a little bit in those lessons when they first come back, just try and get people back involved and just slowly build things back up, and just adapted, I think, those secondary lessons to help with that.
Yeah, okay, cool. And I'm gonna just go to Emily. I know that you've put down there around children increasing in weight, but is there anything in terms of the non-physical sort of elements? So we talked about weight, we talked about fitness, but is there anything around a reduction in any of the life skills that you've noticed in terms of communication, in terms of their ability to communicate, in terms of their ability to work with others?
Yes, so quite a few of the children in my class really did isolate with their families, so that all they had really for a few months were a lot of adult interactions as opposed to children. So when it became the lockdown was lifted and they were able to socialise, I could tell as soon as they came back in September, the children who had then been able to go and see other friends outside, and the ones that literally have just been indoors with their parents, they've sort of forgotten how to interact. If we were doing lessons where we had we do a lot of peer talk, they found it a lot more difficult to communicate. And then when we then went into doing PE, to do quite a lot of that in our school, they then struggled to sort of work together as a team again. They've kind of forgotten what it was like to listen to others and to take turns. And so, I mean, we're sort of slowly getting somewhere in the last couple of weeks, but most definitely the first 4 or 5 weeks of coming back, you could see a certain change in some of the children.
Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you. That's brilliant. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to pick up on those life skills in a moment as well, because I think this is also a real opportunity in terms of that reintroduction to schools where we can really push the life skills approach with PE, and again strengthening our position as a subject. But I'll revert back to the presentation. Okay. So this is some research that we did. We did a survey with PE teachers, whether that be secondary or primary. And these are some of the things that we got back. So in terms of those PE leads who are identifying issues as children return, what could PE help them to address? And top of the pile was low physical fitness. So we've already talked about that lack of fitness. And in the other group, it was definitely around a lack of stamina was one of the things that came out in the last group. They can help address those educational gaps. Mental well-being is very high up there as well, and that difficulty to adjusting to routines. So in the previous group, they did say that children were really struggling with that routine of being back into school, being back in the lessons, and then movement around school or lack of movement around school, etc. And also how very different school maybe felt to them when they came back after COVID, and how they needed to adjust to that as well. So it's really interesting. So if you haven't seen this, we will send this out to you anyway as part of what we do have this on our website as well. This isn't really anything that you don't already know, but it's just in terms of a reflection. Obviously, government guidance changes at 7 o'clock most Fridays, and then schools are asked to unpick it over the weekend. And then if you are in a MAT or you're under a local authority, they unpick it, and then they offer the guidance to you as a school, and it's up to the school to ultimately implement it. But I guess from a PE perspective, all schools are different, and obviously they must interpret the guidance in terms of how it fits within their own institution. And whatever you do decide to do or have decided to do in terms of particular PE, does it meet the needs of the learners? And I guess going back to what Sue Wilkinson said around that plan, that ideal curriculum, do we still have the opportunity to do that, albeit we just need to adapt it slightly and be slightly more creative? So in terms of this slide I've got right now, so this is very much around how we should really maintain that broad and balanced curriculum, so the majority of pupils are taught a full range of subjects, and that's all subjects over the year. So you have the flexibility to decide how you do PE school sport within the systems of control. But Amanda Spielman did mention earlier on or recently that how important PE is in terms of that reinstating PE right now and post September, and the importance of that. So something to hang off, I think. And obviously you've got the guidance from individual NGBs. So if you were delivering any, which obviously you're unable to do, you're unable to do fixtures as of this lockdown. But in terms of anything that you are delivering in school, if you haven't already, look at those guidance documents and the NGB sports that you are permitted to deliver under the government guidance. And obviously about keeping those consistent bubbles and sports equipment. Now, I don't imagine that you want to clean 30 basketballs a day, but you'll see an example of a basketball lesson a bit later. But it's having that opportunity to continue to deliver a high quality PE curriculum, but again, using minimal equipment. And that is really hard. And hopefully some of the stuff that we'll give you today will give you those ideas around how you can do that. And obviously outdoor sports prioritised, if it's indoors around that. But I imagine if you are a primary school, obviously the space is limited and it is very difficult. And I'm guessing you will have to be quite creative in the coming months about how you have well ventilated areas in order for children to still be physically active if the weather is particularly inclement outside. Again, this is just some information we took from that PE survey. Around nearly all schools reported some barrier to delivering PE. Caution around the guidance. you don't want to put anybody at risk, and that's completely understandable. Wet weather is making it more difficult. And in particular, secondary schools believe that the current guidance was unclear. So I'm hoping that the current guidance is slightly more clear, albeit ever changing. So what I want us to do is just do a bit of a reflective task. So what I'd like you to consider is, what are your biggest barriers and challenges at the moment around delivery of physical activity? And Neil, I'm guessing from your point of view as an SGO, it'd be good to understand what you've seen or heard from the schools that you're working with within your SGO remit. That'd be really interesting. So what are the biggest barriers and challenges to delivering PE, sport and physical activity currently? And what does PE look like in your school? Has it diverted much from where you were pre-lockdown one in terms of that time allocation and your curriculum offering? So if you could pop your comments in the chat, I'm just going to leave that there for a few minutes while you populate the chat function, and then I'll come out of the presentation and we'll have a look through those comments. Okay, lots of time. Neil, is that particularly through for secondary, or does that include primary as well, do you think?
Not so sure on the our school specifically, just because of how the timetable works and bubbles, they naturally, although those lessons are still the same length of time, they're losing a lot of time with going and collecting kids from one area, one bubble, taking them up, and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
That's how they're losing time at the moment. But they're trying to, do it as quickly as they can. But
yeah, completely understand. I think one of the comments in the previous group was they've moved to a 2-hour PE lesson so that they can minimise the amount of the cleaning of equipment and whatever else, and the movement of students, and whether or not they're getting changed or not, they didn't mention. But just reduction in that time lost, I guess. So they've gone to a 2-hour PE lesson a week.
Going to reassess, because since half term, they've gone back to changing, and they change in their bubble. So they might change in the classroom or use the change rooms, and then they're cleaned at the end of the day. So no bubble would mix into the change rooms that would normally be there.
Yeah.
But they've kind of included that just to, I think, sometimes change maybe the mindset of the children coming into PE, making something a bit more normalised with getting changed, and also because of different tops and all being worn to school, and certain teachers then in areas not challenging the fact that they're wearing the wrong stuff around school all day, and not just wearing their PE, even though we kept trying to reinforce that.
Yeah. Oh, okay, Emily, do you want to? So you look like you have almost changed your curriculum in terms of timetabling. Do you want to outline what exactly that means?
Yeah, okay, so we've got quite a varied timetable. So I've done a rolling programme, which means that whatever we do, we have an outdoor and an indoor timetable, but the other 3 classes don't do what we're doing. So if we were doing, for example, if we were doing yoga or we were doing tag rugby, no other classes would be doing that for the half term. So then we haven't got to share equipment. But also we've got like an area timetable. So we've got a sort of path area which we do our active mile on, but we're sort of diversifying a little bit. So what we've tended to do is we've got one afternoon allocated per class for the hall, obviously in case the weather is bad, but trying to fit sort of 30 children we can't. So what we've done is we've sort of halved the class, and so one half will either be doing their active mile outside whilst or vice versa, or they'll be, if the weather's not very good, then we'll be in the classroom doing either chair yoga or table tennis, which you can do distance with half of the class, while the other half of the class are, if the weather's okay, they're outside. But we've sort of got like a timetable where we've got pathway, field or playground. So we sort of just tend to make sure that if any other sort of class want to go out and do their active mile, they're not treading on the toes of the people who've got their allocated time, if you know what I mean. So we've always got those 2 hours to be wherever we need to be.
Cool, fab. Are you primary, Emily?
Pardon?
Are you primary?
Yeah, primary.
Okay. Richard, just want to pick on something that you have mentioned around that taking part on virtual events. So in almost your sport offering can still continue, albeit on your school site. Are you doing that within lessons, or are you doing that as an extracurricular, or were doing it as an extracurricular?
No, that's all within lessons. So that's come from Emma Moore and the Mid Cornwall Sports Network launching these virtual events, which have proved really, really popular. The teachers have enjoyed having that as a focus for the week. So it was sports or athletics just before half term. So, you know, a chest push, throw, standing long jump, 60-metre shuttle run, various events where all the children scored points. And it meant every class could contribute a score, and then, it seemed to work really well for engagement, and got something that we felt we could all join in across the entire school, but still safely and within our bubbles, and something that then could be celebrated on newsletters and all the rest. So I think more events like that would be great.
Interestingly then, Richard, and Vicky, Emily, you've mentioned that you're doing that as well. Was that something, therefore, in terms of lesson learned during COVID or during this period of time, is that something that you would continue to do, even if we return to normal, whatever normal is? But when we don't have an infection rate and we don't have a spread of the virus, would you continue to deliver PE in that way?
I think it has been beneficial. I mean, those sorts of events previously, run by the Mid Cornwall Sports Network, you would send your most able children. So those events would be accessible by 12, maybe 16 children across the school. And we've had 140 children doing those events, and still seeing their results and seeing leaderboards and being able to know how each other are getting on. So it's, in terms of the number of children taking part and the enjoyment of it, I think we definitely would carry on with that.
Okay, fab. I guess it's one of them.
Just go on, Ian. Input there. So we basically chose to do 2 to 3 sports a half term, for school with that, leaving that flexible approach where they can, like Richard said, where they can take part at any point during that week. So each class, whenever they got a PE lesson, class teacher wants to do that. We kept it to primary to start with, and then next week we've got a winter games, which is for both primary and secondary. But that was off the back of successful sort of summer games we had, where we had sort of 10,000 different kids input results in the summer with 40,000 different, I guess, data points that they would have competed in more than one sport. So like you said, it very much from our learning. We've tried to do the odd virtual thing in the past, not really worked necessarily, but very much that this is an opportunity, like Richard said, for us to get more people involved more often.
Yeah, brilliant. That's great. Vicky, can I just chat? Are you based in a primary school, Vicky, or secondary?
Primary.
Primary. Okay, that's great. Very well for where we're going next, because then I won't talk about the secondary stuff too much. Okay, super. Right, let me share my screen again. Thank you for that. Really interesting set of circumstances in terms of some of the negative aspects of the space, their time and equipment, but then actually some of the positives that have come out of this period of time in terms of virtual intra-competition, but then also young people almost, I guess, doing an element of leadership across that as well, which is fantastic. So I just want to share this with you. This is what we call our curriculum blueprint at the Youth Sport Trust, and what we believe that young people should be doing throughout their physical education career years, EYFS up to Key Stage 4, is that they deliver that the PE curriculum delivers the following around the physical competence, physical activity, healthy lifestyle behaviours running throughout it, and then the social, emotional, and the metacognition elements of those personal outcomes, and having that almost that ladder on the right hand side to what that actually equates to and what the young person will gain from having a curriculum that almost develops all of those areas. And I guess this is very much about that whole person. So really taking that holistic approach and using PE to develop the entire child, and how they can develop their physical and their social and their thinking and emotional skills, and also learn how to apply them and then transfer them into other life situations. And we're going to talk about a resource called My Personal Best shortly, but it's not necessarily about the resource. It's more necessarily about the approach for delivery of PE in terms of those life skills. So I guess what I would say is, in terms of this document that you can see in front of you right now, is this reflective of your curriculum now, or was it a reflection of your curriculum pre-COVID, or is it something that actually during this period of time you have recognised that the social and emotional elements of PE, because of now what you're seeing the children haven't got, now they've come back, it may have heightened your awareness of actually what PE delivers, and also for your young people. So we will share that post the meeting. And if you haven't already, these are just some of the delivery principles and ideas that we've developed as an organisation that can be accessed on our website. So some of the teaching tips on the left-hand side around PE and physical activity to support well-being. The right-hand side is around those delivery principles and how to keep that activity safe, and some of the procedures that you will need to undertake, which you probably are already very aware of in terms of cleaning and risk assessments, etc., and students being in their own bubbles. But above all, I'm guessing at the moment, particularly now, is that fun needs to be a real big element of what we're delivering, particularly in PE and physical activity, and how we can engage students and using the fun element to activity. So this is what we would have talked about in terms of that extracurricular offer. You can obviously still deliver extracurricular during lunch times. That is within in your gift as a school, if you are continuing to do that or want to continue to do that. This is just some of the things that the lockdown restrictions that might have caused, that students might have felt when they were out of school, some of the suggested activities, and then some of the where this leads into the intent in terms of the response to COVID. Obviously, there is some guidance hopefully coming out soon around extracurricular, but we do have a webinar that is going to specifically look at enrichment and extracurricular on the 26th of November that I'll reiterate at the end of this workshop. And we have been given permission to share that link with you, or for you to register if you want to be a part of that. It's like a 3:30 to 4:30. It is normally a membership benefit to the YST, but because of all of the issues surrounding extracurricular, we feel it would be really worthwhile if we could get an extended sort of number of partners around that workshop. That's what it looks like for secondary, so slightly different in terms of the intent. This is the physical education response for those young people with SEND around foundation and key stage 1. And then again, all of these documents are available for schools and for yourselves on the Youth Sport Trust website. So moving on to this thing about what I talked about before around my personal best. So are we in a position now, particularly with COVID, where we can really be explicit about all of those other life skills that pupils really gain from having a really broad and balanced PE curriculum? So for instance, this is a teacher card on the left hand side, which has been designed through My Personal Best Primary. It has been amended, I think, under the current restrictions. So for instance, this is a focus around dance, and it's to address people concerns around anxiety, trauma, or loneliness. The focus of the life skill as part of that lesson is communication. Then it gives you ideas of how you can cross-curricular link it to RSE, and then the health education part, and then also English and creative writing. So this is just an example of a resource or an opportunity whereby you can make your teaching of life skills more explicit in and through PE. So this isn't about changing your curriculum. It's not about changing your pedagogy. It's helping you to really ensure that those life skills that those young people are learning are far more explicit, so that you know, because you've seen it as they could return to school, that actually a lot of those life skills are reduced, and is this the opportunity now where we can really build them back up, but using the principles of a life skill focus within your lessons. On the right hand side, where there's the lion, that's very much about that take home reflection homework. So actually there's that lead where we talked earlier about how active parents have been within all this. Well, can we continue to gather that momentum about engaging with parents? This is an example of just a gymnastics lesson or resource, and it's around social connectedness, and it's using symmetrical and asymmetrical balances and rhythmic music. This, I believe, is a secondary, so I will just glaze over this, but again, it's very much around this one. This one is particularly about the life skill of self-discipline. So within the MyP resource, there are a number of, I think there's about 12 life skills that the MyPB resource reflects and helps you to deliver those explicitly. Again, this is very much around that home. What can that young person do at home? And on the right hand side, these are some of the things that they're doing around the healthy me, thinking me, and social me, and how that can then be the intent can be taken home and developed further, and that almost that learning reinforced when they reach the home environment. This is just an example of a Sport Premium document. Obviously, I think the new template has come out this week. So this individual school, particular school, has used it to rebuild physical and mental stamina through active and creative P curriculum, and how they can use short activity bursts in the first start term, and that are broken up within in between creative thinking. So one of the previous groups, or I think it was you earlier, I think if it was Vicky, talked about how the students stopped and said, "Oh God, we can't do any more, miss." You know, is that an opportunity to actually then be building that creative thinking between those short activity bursts, for example? Okay, I'm going to show you a series of clips. This one is in particular, these are primary focused, and what we're going to do is show you two clips around the sort of the safe delivery of PE within a primary school. One is around sort of health and fitness, and one will feature a basketball type lesson. So I'm going to let Catherine talk to you, and there's going to be 4 clips, and we'll run through them, and then we'll come back as a group. Yeah, can't hear anything. I know why that was. Sorry, I'm gonna do what I need to do. So bear with me, and we'll play that one again.
So we're here to show you some really fantastic ideas for what you can implement now, and really supporting you to make this as easy and straightforward as possible, while ensuring that PE is really meaningful. So behind us we can see some children taking part in some fitness circuits. We're going to break this apart, look at the structure, look at how we get the purpose in there to leave you with some really clear ideas.
Okay, I'm assuming you could hear that one, so I'll move it on. Super.
We're doing some circuit training to think about how we can build our stamina back up, how we can start exercising our body, and thinking about what happens to our body when we exercise. We also might think about why this is important. So as you're doing your circuit training, have a little think. Why is it important that we exercise? And what do you feel is going on in your body? Okay. Right, could you get yourself ready? So up on your feet, or get into your ready position.
Okay, so that gives you may or may not have access to such a large sports hall, but it gives you an idea of some of the activities around health and fitness that are possible in terms of within those school bubbles. So I'm moving on to the basketball one. Please have a read down the right hand side as you're going along.
What areas we need to be working in at the moment? You just point to the areas we're working in. So, nice small area in the middle. What do we need to do with our eyes? What was that, Jeremiah? Track. Huh? So not tracking me at the moment, but when we're moving, what are we doing, Laura? Big loud voice. And what are we scanning for? Space. Show me.
It's really important in any practice that we are always aware of meeting our pupils' needs. Differentiation is key in anything in teaching. In physical education, we still need the same logic to apply. We want to move the children on through the sequence of learning whenever they're ready to do so. What the teacher has structured here is we've actually now got into the lesson and there's 3 levels of differentiation. At the far end, children are mastering their basketball skills with a few defenders to consider. The teachers use cones to represent the defender. In here, where children's competencies developed a bit more, they've got more defenders in place. Whereas at the end, now we're going to see how the teacher progresses on some of those learners that are now ready to apply that learning.
Okay, we won't see how that teacher progresses them on, but she does actually progress them on in terms of bringing in a defender that then works with a small group. But it gives you a bit of an idea. You may not have access to that lovely playground either, and obviously the weather is very unpredictable. But I just hope that gives you some idea of how you can continue to deliver safe PE, but also bring in those other elements that were mentioned in terms of the differentiation and the movement between those the levels of the kids within that lesson. So we've got a few secondary examples here. I'm going to sort of rush over them, but I think there's potentially some elements of the Key Stage 3 things that you may see that may be quite relevant to you at Key Stage 2. So we'll just run through them. But this is Rushmere Park Academy's recovery plan, and they wanted their PE recovery plan to be very much around physiological fitness, physical activity built into every aspect of the curriculum, focus on building stamina, physical and academic stamina, and emphasis on outdoor learning, and obviously having that COVID-19 secure practice. So this is a Didcot Girls' School, and what they have done, they've really looked at their curriculum. And if I fly over to this one, they really wanted to identify what the students were missing on their return to school in terms of the aspects of school life and how could they provide that with PE. So they identified that interaction with others, and obviously we've already mentioned that ability to give others a turn or collaborate. We've already talked about that. Feedback during the task and not after the task, targets and challenge and experience different environments. That's what they believe their students were missing when they returned to school. So they really looked at their intent, particularly across all of their healthy elements. But in terms of healthy me, their intent was very much around the physical, creative thinking and leading. And you'll see examples there of what they really want to do. So in terms of having physically confident learners, health and well-being, and empowering lifelong learners. So it gives you some idea into how you don't have to change your PE practice, but actually there's a much wider agenda that PE can really support. And what they did was there on the right hand side, you'll see a table. That is the information that they got from students. So they asked students a series of questions, and these are the responses that they got. And that has absolutely helped them to almost implement a PE curriculum that they feel meets the needs of their students. We won't do that one. But again, if I look at the Healthy Mean PE for year 7 and 8, the Key Stage 3, it's all about creating opportunity for students to embed and develop their physical, social, emotional well-being, whilst also being physically confident. So when we looked before about that curriculum blueprint, physical competence was reducing as you get further up the Key Stage chain. But absolutely at Key Stage 3, there is that element of particularly needing it, particularly during that transition from primary to secondary. And you can see the things that they've got there around their physical thinking, leading and creative me, and some of the stuff that they want to implement. We don't need to know, we've talked about that one. I'm not going to talk about my personal best because we've talked a lot about that, but I want to give you the opportunity to ask any questions at this point. You don't have to. You might have something burning that we've not addressed, but now is your opportunity. You can either do it as the function or you can just unmute yourself. If there are no questions, that's equally fine. Okay. Super. Okay, so obviously some of your next steps, you're all enrolled in risk assessments, you're all fine with that. The government employee school guidance, so there may be some further guidance coming out about extracurricular that you may want to make yourselves aware of. Obviously safety first, and ultimately planned and sequenced curriculum that meets the needs of your learners. In terms of any further support that you might need, so we have developed some resources at YST, one around bubble leadership. So how can you still deliver leadership within your bubbles and schools? That's at both primary and secondary. In the middle resource is the school sport and enrichment response, which is obviously slightly different now, but in terms of when we return to school sport and enrichment, that might be something that you want to look at. And then we've also got an all about autism resource, which is really, really fantastic, which is really sharing strategies to make sure that physical education is supported or can be supported for students with autism. That's a really good resource. Again, top supportability is all about inclusive activities within your curriculum. So please take a look at that if you want any further support about inclusion. Earlier this year, well, in September when we returned, we launched our Well Schools platform, which is powered by the YST and really supported by the Bupa Foundation. And this is really exciting. It's a movement. It's not a resource, it's a movement where you can go and find out what other schools are doing around particular themes that you may have identified within your students and staff. So this is a wellbeing platform for you to share and also get ideas around any wellbeing issues that you have within your school setting. And it helps, and the aim is really to help improve educational outcomes by placing wellbeing at the very heart of your school. So I'd really recommend that you go to that platform. All we require is you to sign up and pledge, which then gives you opportunity to access all of the work that other schools have undertaken in the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks. So that is it from me. What time are we on? We have 8 minutes left. We don't need to fill those 8 minutes if we don't need to. What I am going to do, if anybody is interested in the workshop that I mentioned around enrichment and extracurricular, please contact Chris Cause, and I'm just popping his email in the chat function now. There is the opportunity for us to share that link with you, even whether or not you are a member of the Youth Sport Trust. So it'd be really good to get a broader range of partners that will attend that workshop. It's on the 26th of November and it's 3:30 till 4:30. There's nothing else from me. If there's anything else from you, please pop it in the function. But I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you for being so enthusiastic, for engaging in the chat and the sharing. You are doing an amazing job. I can't imagine how difficult it is in and around schools and education right now. And thank you for everything that you are doing. Thank you for maintaining that environment for young people, for that consistent environment, that routine, and for some of them that secure and safe environment that they may have really lacked during lockdown. So thank you very much and have a good weekend on whatever your endeavours may be. And Richard, I hope your back gets better very soon. Thanks very much, guys.